started with a headache, then the tightness in my chest. That old familiar flutter of panic, not full-blown but close enough to remind me of the way things used to be. I hadn't felt like this in over a year, not since I found the right medication, the right dosage, the right rhythm that let me function like a person, again instead of a walking raw nerve. I told myself it was stress. Work had been heavier than usual. Maybe I skipped a meal. Maybe I needed more sleep. The excuses came easily, like muscle memory. But then came the spirals, the kind that pulled me under without warning. Trivial things ballooning into irrational disasters in my mind. I'd be fine one minute and on the verge of tears the next. Night after night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, heart pounding like I'd run a marathon. I kept taking my pills every morning, swallowing them with the same routine as always, convinced this was just a rough patch, a bump in the road, until Thursday. I dropped one of my pills while refilling my weekly organizer. It rolled off the counter and onto the tile. When I bent down to pick it up, I froze. It was blue. My prescription had always been white, small, oval, scored down the middle. This was round, glossy, coated. I grabbed the bottle and squinted at the label. Same name, same dosage. But when I poured the contents into my hand, my stomach turned. They were all blue. I took a picture and ran a quick reverse image search. They weren't medication at all. They were sugar candy, cheap mints shaped like pills. I dumped the rest of the bottle onto the counter, heart now fully in panic mode, and stared at the pile of deception. Someone had replaced my medication, someone with access to my room, someone who knew my routine, someone who didn't think I'd notice. It was the moment everything in my body stopped blaming me and started asking a much bigger question. Who and why? The answer came faster than I expected. Tyler had left his laptop open on the kitchen table. He'd stepped out to grab takeout, his text messages syncing to the screen like they always did. I wasn't looking for anything, not really. But when I walked by and saw my name in bold across the top of a message thread titled Squad Experiments, something inside me said, "Look." So I did. At first, I didn't understand what I was reading. Lines of casual cruelty laced with laughing emojis and gifs of people freaking out. Then the context clicked. Bro, I can't believe she hasn't noticed. Bet she thinks her brain's just broken again. We should have filmed it. Call it the Placebo Princess. My vision blurred, but I kept scrolling. The timestamps matched the exact day I started feeling off. There were photos, too. One of Tyler holding 2 pill bottles, one real, one filled with mints. His caption read, "Guess which one Lena's getting this week?" Dozens of laughing reactions. It wasn't just Tyler. It was his entire group of friends, guys I'd cooked dinner for, sat across from during movie nights, smiled at when they'd come over to watch football in our living room. They all knew. They thought it was hilarious. One of them even said, "Dude, if she freaks out, just tell her she missed a few doses. She'll believe it. Her brain already thinks it's broken." I didn't even realize I was shaking until my hand brushed the trackpad and made the window snap closed. I sat down slowly, the words echoing like a drumbeat in my skull. Not from strangers, from people I trusted, from the man I lived with, slept next to. Tyler didn't just gaslight me, he recruited a team. The key wasn't that they didn't believe in mental illness, it was that they did and they thought it was a toy, something to poke and prod for entertainment, something to manipulate just to see what would happen. And now I knew the truth. They weren't going to get away with it. He walked in like it was any other night, takeout in one hand, keys in the other. His hoodie smelled like cheap laundry detergent and stale weed, the usual. I was sitting at the kitchen table, laptop open, the group chat pulled up and waiting. I didn't say anything at first. I just turned the screen toward him. He froze, one foot still in the air from stepping through the door. I watched the recognition flicker across his face, followed by something else. Calculation. "Oh," he said slowly, setting the food down. "You weren't supposed to see that." That was it. You weren't supposed to see that, not "I'm sorry," not "Are you okay?" I was never supposed to need to see it, I said quietly, because you were never supposed to do it. He gave a little half laugh and rubbed the back of his neck. Babe, come on, it was just a joke. We were going to switch them back. It wasn't a big deal. A joke, I repeated, tasting the word like poison. You messed with my medication. Do you have any idea what that actually does to someone? He shrugged. You were fine. I stood up so fast the chair scraped hard against the tile. He flinched slightly, not from fear, but from discomfort. He was still convinced this was just a conversation, a small mistake, something we'd move past once I calmed down. You think panic attacks are funny? I asked. You think being unable to sleep, to think, to function, that's just a prank? Jesus, Lena, he muttered, already annoyed. You're overreacting. It was literally 2 weeks. There it was, overreacting. The classic word men use when they've run out of excuses and need to shift the blame. I stared at him, dead silent until he finally looked away. I don't care what you meant to do, I said. You did it. You watched me fall apart and thought it was entertaining. He tried to say something else, but I walked past him. I'm done, I said. With you, with your friends, with all of it. He still didn't get it. He had no idea the storm he'd just invited in. The human body remembers trauma, even when the mind tries to stay composed. The first 3 days after I stopped taking the candy, after I got real meds from the pharmacy and restarted my dosage, were the worst. My system didn't trust me anymore. The chemical balance I'd spent over a year building had been quietly wrecked by someone who thought it would be funny. I barely slept. When I did, I had night terrors so vivid I woke up clawing at my own skin. I jumped at sounds that weren't there. I cried in the shower, on the floor, in the hallway, always in silence, because part of me was still too embarrassed to fall apart loudly. I kept hearing his voice in my head. You were fine. I wasn't fine. I wasn't even close. My chest tightened at random intervals as if my body was bracing for an impact I couldn't see. Every conversation felt like a test I was failing. Grocery stores became overwhelming. The world got too loud again. And the worst part? I started questioning myself, even knowing what they did, even seeing the screenshots. My brain still tried to gaslight me. Maybe I was making a bigger deal out of this than necessary. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe they were right. That thought scared me more than anything else. Because if they could do that to me and I still doubted my own reality, what about all the women who never find the group chat, who never get the proof? I stopped trying to be strong that week. I let myself be weak. I called my therapist. I told her everything. I slept on the couch for 4 nights because the bed still smelled like Tyler's cologne. I made meals I could barely eat. I forced myself to shower, to answer emails, to exist. And somewhere in the middle of the mess, I found something else. Rage. Not explosive, not loud, just a low, steady burn that said, this isn't over. They wanted to make me feel small, but they underestimated one thing. I write everything down, and I wasn't done keeping records. I didn't make a dramatic scene. There was no yelling, no plates thrown, no final confrontation with tears and shaking hands. I'd already done that in private where no one could see. This part was just execution. I waited until I'd refilled my prescription, until the panic had dulled to a manageable hum, until my fingers stopped trembling when I picked up my phone. Then I went room by room, packing up everything that was mine. I left his stuff untouched, let him deal with the silence. He texted me while I was folding my clothes into boxes. You're being cold. An hour later, we need to talk. 2 hours after that, you're seriously ending everything over a prank? I didn't respond. I didn't owe him clarity after what he'd taken from me. Instead, I opened a new folder on my laptop and labeled it Evidence. Inside, I dropped every screenshot of the group chat, photos of the candy pills in my prescription bottle, the timestamped texts from his friends, the one of Tyler smiling, holding the fake bottle with the caption, "Lena's New Meds." I found the receipt from the pharmacy, pulled the refill logs from my account, saved the record of my panic attack appointment from last week. Every shred of proof went into the folder, piece by piece, until the file glowed like a loaded weapon on my desktop. Then I blocked his number. I removed every contact tied to his group of friends. Social media, email, mutual playlists. Gone. I erased him digitally the same way he tried to erase my reality. The break wasn't loud, it was deliberate, and it was done. When I finally zipped up my suitcase and locked the door behind me, I didn't look back. There was nothing left to mourn. Only something to protect. Me. My therapist didn't ask for explanations. She just listened. I told her everything. How I'd thought I was spiraling for no reason, how I blamed myself, how I discovered the candy pills, the screenshots, Tyler's laughter, the feeling of losing control not because of my brain, but because someone else had decided I didn't need to have it. Her eyes didn't widen in shock. Instead, they sharpened, like she'd heard versions of this story before. "I believe you," she said. It was the most grounding thing anyone had said in weeks. From there, we started over. A fresh treatment plan, real medication, routine check-ins. She made space for the fear, the betrayal, and the rebuilding. I also called my doctor, told her the pills I'd been taking weren't mine, that someone had swapped them out. She flagged my file, made a note, promised to support any next steps, said I wasn't the first patient to be sabotaged by someone who thought mental health was a game. Later that week, I sat on the floor of my best friend Grace's apartment, knees tucked under me, telling her everything. She didn't try to fix it. She didn't say, "That's awful," on repeat or offer empty comfort. She just listened, like she always did. And when I finished, she leaned back and asked one question. "Have you thought about suing him?" I blinked. "What he did isn't just cruel," she said. "It's reckless. It's dangerous. It could be criminal." I hadn't let myself go there yet, not really. I was still in survival mode, still just trying to breathe. But the idea didn't feel foreign. It felt right. I opened my laptop and clicked on the evidence folder. "I've been documenting," I said quietly. Grace smiled, sharp and satisfied. "Good. Then let's make sure he learns what it feels like to be powerless." I didn't nod. I didn't make grand promises, but I saved the number of a lawyer that night. And for the first time in weeks, I slept without waking up. There was nothing dramatic about it. No cinematic montage, no music swelling in the background, just me, sitting cross-legged on the floor of my apartment, laptop open, coffee gone cold beside me. I started with what I knew. The screenshots from Tyler's group chat were the foundation, his words, their laughter, the timeline. I saved them into clearly labeled folders by date and subject. I cross-referenced the days I'd logged panic attacks with the days they were joking about upping the dosage of candy. Then came the texts, his dismissal, his deflection, the phrase, "You were fine," in black and white, the now infamous, "It was just a prank," and "You're overreacting" messages. I took screen recordings in case he tried to delete anything later. Next, video. One of his friends had posted a TikTok 2 weeks earlier, just a few seconds long. Tyler shaking a pill bottle with a grin, mouthing along to some trending audio about fixing girls. The caption had read, "Let's see what happens when she doesn't get her happy pills." It had been deleted, but I already had it saved. I pulled credit card receipts from the week he bought the mints, matched them to the change in pill color, labeled each file, backed them up twice. One in the cloud, one on an encrypted drive. I wasn't leaving any piece behind. I even downloaded chat logs from Discord, where one of the guys had bragged about being part of the Med Switch Club. Their usernames, their timestamps, every snide comment documented. At the bottom of the folder, I placed the photo of the candy pills in my palm. My hand was slightly shaking in the shot. I didn't crop it. I wanted to remember what that felt like. By the end of the night, I had a digital fortress of evidence. methodical, airtight, undeniable. It wasn't for revenge, it was for justice. And justice requires receipts. Her name was Eliza Vaughn, a referral from a mental health advocacy group Grace had sent me. Her website was clean, minimal, but her bio read like a warning label for anyone stupid enough to test her limits. Harvard Law, 10 years specializing in psychological injury and medical interference. Former prosecutor, now in private practice. I emailed her the evidence folder with a short note. "Hi, Eliza, I believe I may have a case. I've attached documentation. Happy to speak further." Lena. She responded 20 minutes later. "Lena, this is not only actionable, it's egregious. Let's talk tomorrow. I'm furious on your behalf." We met via video call the next day. She didn't blink once while going through the evidence. Her face remained calm, clinical. Only her voice betrayed the storm beneath. "They tampered with prescription medication," she said. "That's not a prank. That's criminal interference with medical treatment. Depending on your state, it could carry jail time." I nodded slowly. "Even if they say it was just a joke?" "Intent doesn't change outcome. If someone sets a house on fire for fun, it's still arson. They knew it was your medication. They replaced it. They laughed about it. That's more than enough to move forward." She outlined our options: a civil suit against Tyler and his friends for emotional and psychological damages, potential criminal charges for tampering, a restraining order if needed, and if we played it right, a way to make sure their futures felt the weight of what they did. "This kind of case," she said, "sends a message, not just to them, but to every other person who thinks mental health is a punchline." I didn't speak for a long moment. I just let the idea settle. Me not begging for peace, not apologizing for needing help. Me standing up and saying, "You don't get to do this," not to me, not to anyone. I looked directly into the camera. "Let's begin." He was served on a Wednesday. Not at home, where he might have spun it into some private joke. No, Eliza made sure it happened publicly. Outside the gym, just after his mid-morning lift, he was still in a sweat-streaked shirt when the server handed him the thick envelope with his full legal name printed across the top. Inside were the details: the civil suit, the evidence, the formal complaint. Attached was the chat log, screenshots of every message, every emoji, every joke, and the names, all of them. His friends weren't just witnesses, they were co-defendants. Eliza filed it with precision. The wording was direct, unemotional, and devastating. Deliberate psychological harm, intentional interference with prescribed medical treatment, documented malice. Tyler didn't post about it, but one of his friends, Ryan, did, not realizing how wide the net would spread. He tweeted something snide about cancel culture and crazy exes trying to ruin lives. 3 hours later, the tweet was deleted. By then, HR at the marketing firm where Ryan had just started his internship had already received 2 emails, one from a concerned follower with screenshots and one from Eliza. The internship was revoked by end of day. Word began to spread. Quietly at first, a mutual friend here, a former classmate there, people who saw the names in the filing who connected the dots. By Friday, Tyler's roommate had moved out. "Didn't sign up to live with someone getting sued," he told someone on Instagram. The comment was deleted, but not before it was screenshotted and sent to me. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel revenge. What I felt was gravity, that low, steady pull of consequences catching up to people who'd floated above them for too long. This wasn't me burning their lives down. This was me finally watching the smoke rise from the matches they lit. I didn't plan to share my story. Not at first. It was too raw, too tangled in shame, even though I'd done nothing wrong. The world isn't kind to women with mental health stories. We get labeled, dismissed, reduced. But one night, unable to sleep, I opened a mental health forum I used to lurk on during my worst years. I typed out the whole story, everything except names, just facts, just feelings. I ended the post with one line. They thought it was a joke. My brain didn't. I hit submit and closed the tab. By morning, it had gone viral. Thousands of comments, hundreds of DMS women sharing eerily similar stories, meds flushed down the drain by partners who didn't believe in them, panic attacks mocked, diagnoses used as weapons. They didn't need my name to understand the truth. They'd lived it. By the end of the week, a podcast host reached out, a woman I'd followed for years, sharp, respected, unafraid to tackle hard conversations. She read my post. She wanted me to come on. "We don't have to use your name," she said. "Just your voice, just your truth." I said yes. The interview was recorded 2 days later. I sat in my bedroom, microphone clipped to my hoodie, hands steady for the first time in a long time. I told the story again, not tearfully, not angrily, just clearly, calmly. I talked about what it feels like to lose control, to think you're unraveling only to find out someone else was pulling the thread. I talked about rebuilding, about records, about how preparation isn't paranoia when you live in a world where some people think mental illness is a punchline. When the episode aired, the response was immediate and loud. Support, outrage, solidarity. Other stories surfaced. Other women came forward. The narrative shifted. And for the first time since Tyler swapped out my meds and laughed about it in a group chat, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen, and soon they would too. It took Tyler exactly 12 days after the podcast aired to try reclaiming the narrative. He posted a Notes app screenshot to his Instagram story. White background, black text, 6 paragraphs of performative humility dressed up as remorse. He called it an unfortunate misunderstanding. Said he never intended harm. Talked about love and mental health being complicated. There was no mention of mints. No mention of the group chat. No mention of how he laughed while I crumbled. He wrapped it all in buzzwords: accountability, reflection, growth. And then, buried in paragraph 4, he slipped in the line he really wanted people to read. She was going through a hard time. We all were. I didn't handle it perfectly, but I was trying to help. There it was, the soft gaslight, the subtle rewrite. The attempt to turn himself from a man who tampered with prescription meds into a boyfriend who just got overwhelmed. He posted it at midnight. By 8 a.m., it had backfired. Badly. The internet didn't just see through it, they dismantled it piece by piece. Users dug up the group chat screenshots, the TikTok, the texts, the receipts already circulating in whispers and comment threads. Side-by-side comparisons of his apology and his private jokes flooded timelines. One tweet read, "Imagine writing a whole PR statement when your victim has timestamps, video, and backup drives." Another, "This isn't a redemption arc. This is a documentary called He Thought It Wouldn't Come Out." His comments were turned off by noon. A few brave followers tried to defend him. They didn't last long. Truth has a way of cutting through curated narratives, and Tyler's version didn't just have holes. It had evidence contradicting it. By that night, he deleted the post. But screenshots are forever, and so is accountability. The courtroom wasn't dramatic, it was sterile, quiet, the kind of place where emotion doesn't matter unless it's backed by documentation, which, fortunately, I had in spades. Tyler walked in wearing a blazer I'd picked out for him years ago, still thinking optics could save him, still thinking charm had currency in rooms like this. He didn't look at me. His lawyer did most of the talking, deflecting, reframing, minimizing, called it a poorly conceived joke, called the group chat immature banter, claimed they never intended for harm to occur. Eliza stood and calmly dismantled all of it. She brought timelines, quotes, screenshots, pharmacy records, therapist notes, the TikTok, the texts, every piece laid out like chess moves, made months in advance. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. When the judge looked at Tyler and read aloud his own words, "Let's see what happens when she doesn't get her happy pills," something in his posture finally broke. He shrank, so did the friend who filmed the video. He tried to claim it was fake. Deleted. Taken out of context. Eliza handed the judge a USB. "Original file," she said. metadata included. Silence. The judge ruled swiftly. Tyler and his friend Ryan were fined for emotional distress, medical interference, and intentional harm. Another friend, Jared, was referred to the district attorney's office for criminal charges, since he was the one who physically swapped the pills. Outside the courtroom, I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I breathed. A real, full breath. The kind that doesn't get caught in your chest. The kind you forget how much you need until it returns. The verdict wouldn't undo the damage. It wouldn't erase the weeks I lost to fear and fog, but it would mark what happened. It would say, "This matters. This is real. You are not crazy." And that was more powerful than any apology he'd never meant. Healing is slow. It doesn't come in milestones. It doesn't arrive with dramatic music or breakthroughs in therapy. It comes in quiet moments, when the panic doesn't show up in the grocery store, when sleep comes without resistance, when I go an entire day without thinking about what they did. I'm not over it. I don't think I ever will be, but I'm not underneath it anymore either. The legal case closed a chapter, but it didn't write the ending. That part was mine to decide. So I started small. Volunteering with a mental health advocacy group, the same one that connected me to Eliza. I joined their speaker panel, told my story to college students, HR departments, even a few medical professionals who didn't realize just how easy it is for someone to weaponize medication. It didn't always feel powerful. Sometimes it just felt necessary. Tyler's group fractured in the aftermath, not officially, not loudly, but the cracks were clear. I watched from a distance as they stopped appearing in photos together. One deleted social media altogether. Another tried rebranding as a wellness coach, only to be shut down by people linking the court documents. Reputation is a fragile thing. So is trust. But the difference is, I didn't need theirs to rebuild mine. My world grew smaller, tighter, more intentional. I reconnected with people I'd quietly pushed away during the chaos. I made space for laughter again, for stillness, for myself. Grace came over one night and saw the evidence folder still sitting on my desktop. "You ever gonna delete that?" she asked gently. I shook my head. Number not yet. Some reminders aren't for reliving. They're for remembering how far you've come. It arrived on a Thursday. A plain white envelope with no return address. I almost didn't open it. Thought it might be spam, but when I unfolded the paper, the handwriting stopped me. It was from Caleb, one of Tyler's friends, not the worst of them, not the loudest voice in the group chat, but the one who always laughed along, who never said a word in protest. "Lena, I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to say thank you for speaking up, for documenting everything, for not staying quiet even when you had every reason to. I watched what we did, what I did, and convinced myself staying silent made me innocent. It didn't." He wrote that he'd started therapy, said the court case woke him up, that he saw his name in the filing and finally realized silence was complicity, that he'd played along with things he didn't find funny because he was afraid to stand out, because he liked belonging more than he liked being good. He ended with, "You saved someone, not just yourself. Me too, I think. Thank you. Caleb." I sat with the letter for a long time. Not because I didn't believe him, but because I did. Maybe it was real. Maybe it wasn't. I didn't owe him a response either way. But I folded it carefully, slipped it into a drawer, and let it stay. Not every story gets closure, but some get grace. The headline was simple. It wasn't a prank, it was control. My name sat just below it, black on white, as permanent as anything on the internet can be. The byline felt heavier than I expected, not because I was scared, but because I knew how many women would recognize themselves in the story I was about to tell. The op-ed had started as a late-night thought, one of those mental drafts you write in the dark while staring at the ceiling. It turned into a document on my desktop, then an email, then a pitch accepted by one of the most respected publications in the country. They didn't ask for edits. They said it spoke for itself. I didn't name Tyler or his friends. I didn't have to. This piece wasn't about them. It was about autonomy, about how easy it is to frame cruelty as humor, how phrases like lighten up and we were just messing around are used to mask violations that leave invisible bruises. I wrote about what it's like to doubt your own mind because someone else decided to play God with your chemistry. I wrote about silence and what happens when you stop accepting it as safety. Most of all, I wrote about the difference between being overly sensitive and being observant, being prepared, being right. Within 24 hours of publication, the piece had been shared over 500,000 times. It was quoted in forums, reposted on LinkedIn, dissected in college classrooms. People from all over the world reached out. Therapists, professors, survivors, mothers, sisters, men who'd finally understood the weight of their words. Some just wrote thank you. Others wrote, this happened to me too. I wasn't anonymous anymore, but I wasn't exposed. I was visible, on my own terms, in my own words. The narrative wasn't something I needed to defend against. It was something I got to shape. And this time, there were no twisted punchlines, no laughing spectators, no one rewriting what happened to make themselves look better. Just me, telling the truth, unapologetically. And in doing so, I didn't just reclaim the story, I ended it. Exactly where it belonged, with my name. This story was brutal, but this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.